Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you for tuning in to the Skol State of Mind podcast. I'm your host, D Woods. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody out there for rocking with me and giving me some feedback on my last video I dropped. That was my first video I dropped in a long time, a couple of months, where I basically broke down, my opinion on how I felt, the top three concerns for the Minnesota Vikings, going into training camp. Thank you. Much appreciated. Now, in this video is kind of like a piggyback onto that one, where I'm going to actually, fix a couple of concerns with three free agents that, as of right now, are currently still available. And I feel like they can kind of solidify, some roster spots and kind of like fill the holes on the roster and, where we won't be so concerned about it. Now, some of these names is the names that, have been talked about, through social media before. Some of these names, been linked to the Vikings before, but I'm going to break down my opinion with these players on why I feel they will be a great fit for the Vikings going into this season. So let's start off with this. Carson Wentz. Now, we all know Carson Wentz is not the same player he was in in the beginning of his career, when he was a lot younger with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, and another thing too with the Carson Wentz situation, I do understand that the Vikings do have a veteran quarterback on the roster, not on the roster, but on the coaching staff in Josh McCown that can help mentor JJ McCarthy. But the concern I have is we're not going to ask Josh McCown to play if something happens to JJ McCarthy. We're going to ask Sam Howell to play, right? Or Brett Rippon. So I feel like, going to training camp, the Vikings should take a look at Carson Wentz, just to be that break glass in emergency if something happens to McCarthy and you need somebody to basically, play 2 to 3 games. And maybe in those 3 games, he can go 2-1. I still believe, Carson Wentz has talent, and he has some value that he can add to certain teams. He basically was the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. They went all the way to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that he's the reason for it, but I just really feel like you might need a veteran type quarterback, behind JJ McCarthy that can actually play. Right. I understand the Josh McCown situation. I do. But we never going to ask Josh McCown to suit up and play if something, happens to McCarthy. And I think Carson Wentz for this team will be a perfect fit. I mean, he was a top draft pick in his, prospective draft. I mean, when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, he was playing at the MVP level. I will just say, like, the injuries kind of, derailed his career and his trajectory, but he can bring something to this, quarterback room that, the Vikings don't have. And, he can help out with some situations. So I would, you know, take a look at Carson Wentz. Now, this is a guy that has been linked to the Vikings in the beginning of free agency. I mean, it was basically talk out there that Asante Samuel and the Minnesota Vikings basically had a handshake, verbal agreement that they would sign him after, the draft. So basically, they wouldn't be, taken away of the compensatory picks. The draft has came and went. Mini camp has came and went. OTAs has came and went, and Asante Samuel Jr. is still out there and he's still available. And I do understand that he has high injury concerns with that shoulder. He didn't play a lot last year because of it. But Asante Samuel is still only 25 years old. And the Vikings cornerback room, it's there's a concern for me in that room because I feel like outside of Ryan Murphy Jr., you don't really have anybody on, currently on the roster that's basically started a lot of games and basically played a lot of snaps in the NFL. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers, is slated to be, the starter on the outside also. And he was a part-time player last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jeff Okuda is a draft bust. Dwight McGloughlin is somebody that's still being developed. Mekhi Blackman is coming off of uh, season-ending knee injury, so we're not really sure how he's going to respond. Going forward. I'm not saying he's not going to come back healthy and he can't come back and be a great player. But what I'm saying is, some of these positions you need some type of insurance. You get me? And I feel like Asante Samuel at 25 years old, it can't hurt. And what I really mean by it can't hurt, I mean, you can bring him into camp, and if it doesn't work out and he's not healthy and he can't, fit the season or whatever, like you can probably do, figure something out and, release him, because we're a couple of weeks away from all NFL teams going into training camp. And I just feel like it would be in Asante Samuel's Junior's best interest to kind of be on somebody's roster going to training camp. Like, I really feel that way. So, with that being said, let's keep it moving. Now, here's another player I feel the Vikings should really pursue is Justin Simmons, safety. And I know people out there are going to be like, oh, we got Josh Metellus, we got Harrison Smith, we got Theo Jackson. I am going to separate Josh Metellus from the other safeties. And that's not a slight against him. It is basically saying that I want Josh Metellus to be able to play the Josh Metellus role. I want him to be able to play the rover role, the star role, whatever Brian Flores wants to put him to be all over the field. I don't want him to not be doing that. That means I don't want him to ever have to play safety if something happens. We don't know what we're going to get in Theo Jackson. We don't. We hope that Theo Jackson is going to be a great safety on us on the opposite side of Harrison Smith. I mean, we can say out there that, the Vikings been just throwing other safeties out, the whole time with Harrison Smith, and Harrison Smith is just making them look good because they don't have to do that much. Well, Harrison Smith is in the twilight of his career. He might retire at the end of this season. And what happens if he gets injured? If he gets injured, then you might have to take Josh Metellus out of that, rover role and throw him back to safety, consistently for games in and game out, just like how he had to play linebacker last year. And it didn't really work well. They still won games, but it didn't work well, in my opinion. So I would bring somebody like Justin Simmons in to help solidify the safety room. I do. I just think, I mean, and it's the same situation with Asante Samuel Jr. Training camp is right around the corner, and players want to be on somebody's roster just so they can continue to showcase their talent. So there you guys go. There are my three players. Thank you for tuning in. Must appreciate it. Skol, baby.